Good afternoon. We will now reconvene the regular council meeting of June 24th at 1 p.m. There is a report from from closed session that council appoint Zachary Thibodeau to the Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the remainder of the 2022-2026 term of council. That is the extent of our report from closed. We'll now move on to, we need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Byrne and Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor. That is approved. Congratulations, Mr. Thibodeau. The next item on the agenda is 8.1. We need, under the public meeting, be opened in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. So we need a resolution to open that public meeting. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. Public meeting is now opened. We will turn it to Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the audience, and maybe those listening at home. Today's public meeting is about proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for an existing lot of record located at 401 Elgar Drive. On behalf of a numbered company, which is directed by Monica Morand, Bob Clark of Clark Consulting Services submitted official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications to the Township of Cavan Monaghan. The applications do pertain to an existing lot of record at 401 Elgar Drive in part of lots 8 and 9, concession 2 of Cavan. And Carly, if you could skip to the key map, which is attachment 1 to the report, that will give everyone an idea of the location of the lands that we are talking about today. The applications do propose the establishment of a non-farm diversified use in the form of a farm resort on the subject property. In support of the applications, a planning justification report was prepared by Clark Consulting Services. An environmental impact statement, a residential agricultural site alteration and reconstruction report was prepared by Oak Ridge Environmental Limited, and a topographical illustration of the property was prepared by Elliott and Parr. And all of that information was submitted in support of the applications and is available in the report for reference. The purpose and effect of the official plan amendment is to add a policy to the Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Core designation in the township's official plan, as it affects a portion of the subject property, to permit the establishment of a non-farm diversified use in the form of a farm resort on the property. If you could flip to the official plan amendment in the attachments, and you're going to have to go through it a little bit, Carly. And there's a map showing the portion of the property that will actually be affected by the official plan amendment. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to implement the official plan policy. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning on a portion of the property from the Oak Ridges Marine Core zone to the Oak Ridges Marine Core Exception 1 zone. Special regulations for the proposed on-farm diversified use are included in the draft Oak Ridges Marine Core Exception 1 zone. The property subject to the applications is approximately 65.9 hectares or 163 acres in size. Access to the property is available from Elgar Drive, but the frontage of the property is located on Carmel Line. There's approximately 450 meters or 1,476 feet of frontage on Carmel Line. If you keep going, you're going in the right direction. Yep, keep going. Okay. So that'll give a good idea. That's a good map. So that's the area of the property that's actually subject to the applications. So as I've indicated, the subject property is currently designated Oak Ridges Marine Natural Core Area in the Cavan Monaghan official plan. As drafted, a portion of the property, the designation was proposed to be changed to provide an exception to that policy framework. In accordance with the draft before council today, in addition to the uses permitted in section 6.3.2 of the plan, a farm resort may be permitted. A farm resort is defined as a secondary use to an established farm operation that provides educational and active opportunities related to the farm operation that A, allows guests to experience and enjoy the agricultural way of life, B, is compatible with and does not conflict or interfere with agricultural operations on the property or normal farm practices in the area, and thirdly, occupies a limited area of the property. Overnight accommodation for the farm resort will be limited to the existing 6-bedroom structure. Recreational uses will be limited to low-intensity recreational uses as defined in the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan. The farm resort shall be operated by the resident farmer or a resident member of the farm family. The farm resort use shall be secondary to the principal agricultural use of the property and shall be limited in area up to 2% of the area of the farm parcel to a maximum of 1 hectare or 2.5 acres. The buildings and structures used for the farm resort shall be limited to those buildings and structures existing as of January 1st, 2024. The farm resort shall be subject to minimum distance separation formula. And lastly, the farm resort use shall be subject to site plan approval. The zoning bylaw amendment proposed today will strive to implement those official plan policies. So as drafted, the zoning bylaw amendment will change the zoning on a portion of the property from the Oak Ridges Marine Corps zone to the Oak Ridges Marine Corps Exception 1 zone. Section 9.3 of the bylaw will be amended to provide special regulations that include an additional permitted use of a farm resort. It will include the same definition for a farm resort that is proposed for the official plan amendment. It will limit the overnight accommodation related to the farm resort to the 6 guest bedrooms located in a single detached dwelling or renovated barn, depending on whose interpretation one wishes to take. Recreational uses will be limited to low intensity recreational uses. Again, the farm resort has to be clearly secondary to the agricultural use of the property and cannot change the character of the property. The farm resort shall not create or become a public nuisance with regard to noise, traffic, emissions, parking, or communication interference. The farm resort shall be operated by the resident farmer or a resident member of the farm family. The farm resort shall employ a maximum of 1 employee in addition to the permanent residents of the single detached dwelling related to the agricultural use. The farm resort shall be limited to 2% of the area of the farm parcel to a maximum of 1 hectare. The farm resort use shall not be rented to any one party for more than 14 consecutive days. No sign or display other than a non-illuminated sign not exceeding 1 square meter in area shall indicate that a farm resort business is being operated on site. And lastly, all other relevant provisions of bylaw number 2018-58 as amended shall apply. So that's the crux of what we're talking about today in terms of the proposed change to the official plan and the zoning bylaw. As required by the Planning Act, notice of this application was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters or 400 feet of the land subject to the applications. We circulated to all required ministries and agencies and to all township department directors. Signs were posted on the Carmel Line and Elgar Drive frontages of the property. The notice of public meeting was also posted on the township website. So we are confident that the notice complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. As of the date of the writing of the planning report, township had received 1 inquiry about the applications and 1 written objection. The 1 written objection included comments about there's errors and omissions in the applications. They talked about non-compliance, they talked about ownership and precedent. The objection indicates that the use of the property fails to meet the criteria for a non-farm diversified use. The development is considered a luxury vacation home/cottage rental with 11 bedrooms and 8 baths, able to accommodate 26 guests and 20 vehicles. The property is not a farming operation. There are no permanent residents. The applications fail to meet any of the criteria. It's not a farming operation that provides as a secondary use educational and active opportunities related to farm operations, as stated in the applications. A barn was never on the site of the renovated barn, new single detached dwelling. The historic barn was located east of the original house and did not have a concrete floor. No 150-year-old barn did. It was built as a bank barn into the hillside. They referenced the 2020 Chestnut real estate listing, including a description that this beautiful land also has a runway, hangar, and workshop for small planes or gliders. End of quote. The hangar was constructed on flat land, not on the site of the original barn. A tool shed with an open end for ostensibly for the storage of farm vehicles was expanded to accommodate the owner's single-engine Cessna. It was constructed with 2x4s recycled from the original farmhouse with oriented structural board along the exterior. It had no interior finished walls and did not have any temporary lodging for a crew as noted in the justification report. Since we received that those comments in writing. We've received further objections from area residents with similar concerns. Those objections, I believe, have been circulated directly to council in the recent number of days. In total, we've received 7 written objections. One of the objections also indicated concerns with an advertisement on Jane's Luxury Rentals and an issue of compliance with restrictions on on-farm diversified uses. The location is an event center, not an on-farm diversified use. So that is the crux of the public comment we've received to date. We've also received comments from township departments. The building department provided the following comments: that the main issue is the concept of the barn being an established existing use. There are conflicting terms used for it throughout the application. However, township records show the use being a barn only. Any change of use was never legalized and therefore not deemed legal non-conforming. There is no record of lodging for crew or bedrooms of any sort. Even if this were shown to be true, this does not meet the definition of a dwelling unit in the Township of Cavan-Monaghan Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw or the Ontario Building Code. As such, the application is not supported by the building department. They further indicated it needs to be clarified how this is being considered a repair of structural elements and did not replace the building itself. What exactly is still in place that was initially there and repaired? Though township staff do not agree that bedrooms existed at all, the addition of bedrooms and facilities does change the use. And what are the storage areas? Secondly, the position regarding the repair of the barn is, in the opinion of township staff, not correct. It is a demolition of a barn and construction of a new single detached dwelling. If there were structural concerns with any building, the concerns should have been rectified through building permits. Number 3, no building permits were applied for prior to construction for any of the works noted in the application, including the new single detached dwelling, renovations to the existing home and cabin, slabs, multiple septic systems, and swimming pool. Building permits for all of these items will be required should the planning applications be approved. Fourthly, the conversion from a pond to a pool was not identified in the applications. It should be noted. Fifthly, the use of each structure is not clear. The new single detached dwelling has 6 bedrooms, but only 4 for guests, and the other 2 are for employees. Question: who is inhabiting the existing home? Number 6, again, the cabin was an existing structure, but not an existing dwelling. As the farm is rented to a neighbor, what farm help is staying in the cabin? The application state there was no structural work done. This is not the only works that require permits. Was there plumbing or HVAC done? Is the cabin now connected to a septic system? Number 7, is the one concrete pad structurally connected to the existing house? Number 8, the new single family dwelling references storage uses throughout the application. Can this be clarified? And lastly, what will be the educational components of the farm resort and who at the property will be conducting this use? The fire department has indicated their support for the building department comments. Township Public Works have noted that the property owner is required to have private waste management pickup. The proposed planning approvals will not allow for inclusion in the municipal waste management services and collection. In addition to internal staff, we also circulated to the required ministries and agencies. The Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board did not identify any concerns or issues related to their mandate, and Bridge Gas has no objections. Hiawatha First Nation asked for clarification about the seasonal versus permanent tributaries and watercourses on the property and asked if trout from Baxter Creek uses the waterways. Peterborough County Planning confirmed that the proposed official plan amendment needs to conform to the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan and Township official plan policies. Clarification on what structures and number of bedrooms and ancillary on-site facilities will assist in better understanding the farm resort proposal. The county confirmed that the township has not proceeded with a new official plan to implement the agricultural system as per the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The township should determine if the subject lands are deemed prime agricultural. As a resource, the township could refer to the official plan in effect prior to the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan. If the township cannot satisfy itself that the site is prime agricultural land, the proposal would not appear to conform to section 11.4 of the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan. Autonomy Conservation has confirmed in writing that the application is consistent with section 3.1 of the PPS referencing natural hazards. Based on the information provided, the development does not appear to create new or aggravate existing hazards. Permits are not required for the proposed farm resort development. And the subject property is not located within a vulnerable area that is subject to source protection policies. The property is located within the vulnerable areas related to Intake Protection Zone 3, a highly vulnerable aquifer and significant groundwater recharge area. Significant drinking water threats are not possible and a restricted land use notice is not required. We are still waiting for the Orca peer review comments for the environmental impact statement. The report before council that is available online did a detailed analysis related to the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, the County of Peterborough official plan, and the Township of Cavan Monaghan official plan. The results of planning staff's analysis indicate that the applications are not consistent with the PPS. The applications may conform to the growth plan if the appropriate justification for the proposed use is provided. The applications do not conform to the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan because on-farm diversified uses are permitted in prime agricultural areas only. And the applications do not conform to the Township of Cavan Monaghan official plan. We have noted a number of outstanding issues in the report that additional information would be helpful in making a final determination and recommendation to council. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. So just to confirm, thank you for that fulsome report. Obviously, we've had it before us for a number of days to go through, just so council and public are aware. So the purpose of the public meeting is to receive comments from the public and input for the comment. There's no decision-making being done today. The context of all of the commentary that's been made today will be received and added to a formal report that will come back before council at a later date. So with that being said, I know there's a number of people in attendance today, but first and foremost, does council have any questions for Mrs. Ellis with regard to her report? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, one thing that caught my interest on the planning justification report, and I guess it's minor in some regards, but I wonder how large it gets. That in the Clark consultant's report on page 27, it refers to what the remodeling was and the definition of nothing structural had been done, but yet all the interior walls had been removed. So my interpretation seems to be different than the consultants. And I just wonder if that interpretation may grow over other concepts that were addressed. I don't know at this point anything about the septics, if they've ever been looked at or who's been on site. It looks from the report that work has actually physically visited it, but I don't know if anybody from staff has actually physically visited. So be my interest.
Ms. Ellis, would look to you or the members of staff in attendance for those answers. Maybe Mr. Phillips.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council and Councillor Byrne. I have not been on site, but the chief building official has been on site. And I think Councillor Byrne has hit on one of the key considerations with these applications is we do have a difference of opinion between staff and the applicant and their consultant about the status of the existing structures. I will let Chief Building Official Phillips expand upon that.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. It's still unclear. I do have some drawings that were submitted as to what the full renovation being called renovation was. From the drawings I see, it's all brand new. So perhaps today they can speak to exactly why they're calling it a renovation. It's not what I'm deeming it. It appears to me that was a full demolition and rebuild of a new structure. I've been on site as well as the Kathleen Shepherd previously from Peterborough Public Health. There are some building or septic applications in to look at the septic systems that have been put in place. We don't have a lot of information on exactly what they're saying was existing or what was there before compared to what is there now, because we have to get through this portion before we can actually issue any kind of permits there.
Thank you both. Other questions, Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, to either Kyle or Karen. I'm not sure which one will take it, but I'm just curious in the timeline. Like I see like a for sale thing from 2020, a stop order in 2020, an application came in 2024. Like how long has this been progressing? And like when it seems like an awful lot of construction to have, kind of flown under the radar with no permits and no applications. Can you, any indication of when this all began? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Huntley. It's been a number of years. So when we first attended the property, all the construction was already complete. We issued orders and have been back and forth with the proponent. They've hired a consultant who's gone back and forth with us as to how they're justifying this. So everything that has been done to date was there when we arrived several years ago. It's just been obviously it's a very complex situation. So it's been a number of items of getting clarification on certain things and going back and forth with the consultant on what the proposal was. But in the meantime, we have issued stop work order and order to comply to make sure that this continues.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Follow-up, Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Chair, just to follow up on that, then, Mr. Phillips. So the stop order was issued in 2020, and this is, all of this stuff is, all the studies and everything that has been from 2020 till now? Is that what I understand?
Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Huntley. That's correct.
Other questions? Councillor Natchoff?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I noticed on page 12, the one point that stated Hiawatha First Nations asked for clarification. If trout was in Baxter Creek that uses the waterways, was there an answer to if there was trout that uses the waterways there?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council and Councillor Natchoff in particular. No, we've not been able to confirm an answer. We understand that fishing is available on site, but I believe, and maybe Mr. Clark can speak to this in his presentation, that there is fishing in the pond on the site, but I'm not sure that there is fishing in the tributaries.
Okay, Councillor Byrne, another question.
Through the chair, just some clarifications on the legislation. When it refers to secondary income, is it talking about gross net of the two separate businesses? There's roughly 50 acres of land there. Very prime agricultural, you're probably maybe looking at $1,000 to $3,000 a year income. When I look at this resort, I just wonder what the actual clarification is. What is the secondary? Is it time? Is it money? Is it gross? Is it net? Like, I don't understand.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne and the other members of council. There is no strict test for what makes it secondary. I think it's a combination of all of those. With an on-farm diversified use, agriculture is intended to be the primary use. So it's intended to take most of the area, create most of the income. On-farm diversified uses are intended to provide legitimate bona fide farmers with an avenue to create some additional income. The policies and regulations were put into the provincial planning framework to support agriculture in Ontario. And I will freely admit, and I'm sure Mr. Clark will also agree, that the policies around on-farm diversified uses in the province of Ontario are quite broad. And those policies do permit a wide variety of on-farm diversified uses, but there are guidelines in place and there's a checklist in place that we use to kind of guide what makes it an on-farm diversified use. And so that's why you see in the draft official plan amendment and the zoning and bylaw amendment, some regulations and policies that speak to the number of employees, how long you can stay there, compatibility, those kind of things. But the intention is that an on-farm diversified use, in this particular case, in the form of a farm resort, is secondary to agriculture. And that's one of the items that we've asked for in the additional information, is for the applicant and their agent to give us some substantial information as to how the farm resort will be secondary to the primary agricultural use of the property.
Follow-up, Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair. So would there also be a follow-up then on what employees, like it was talked on earlier, that somebody's supposed to be there to teach people anything about farming if there's something there farming related? Will that be in a follow-up submission?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne and other council members, that will be in a follow-up submission if we get that information from the applicant and their agent. It is important information. There are restrictions in the draft documents before you today, so that it limits it to people who actually live on the farm are operating the on-farm diversified use. Obviously, sometimes you do need some outside help, and we've made provision for that, but primarily the use is to be operated and supported by people who live on the property and are operating the farm operation.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Counselor Natchez?
Thank you, Chair, through you. I had heard at some point that this property was also listed on MLS for sale over the last 5 years, and I'm just wondering, how is it that, are you able to list a property for sale if work orders have been, or if work has been completed, but no applicable permits have been applied for?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Natchoff. I am not in a position to answer that. Is somebody listing their property for sale is not a township responsibility. We have no I should say we do have an interest, but it's not, we don't regulate how people describe their property. We do provide information should potential buyers ask for clarification or information about a property. We provide public information.
Follow up?
Sorry, thank you. So theoretically then, could I list my property that I own and say that there's gold and silver underneath the property without me actually verifying that that's the case? And as far as, you know, I could make claims of anything then, and the township is not going to be able to regulate that. That would be something through the real estate association. Like, I'm just trying to understand how things are able to be done here, and we're not really able as a township to enforce a lot of stuff.
Yeah, with all due respect, I think we're getting a little off topic. I mean, the sale of property is not really what we're here to manage, and it's not something that we really have a lot of influence in, as Ms. Ellis has alluded to. So I want to make sure there's a number of people in the audience that we want to hear from the public today. But that being said, is there any other questions for Ms. Ellis before we move on to the public portion? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Ms. Ellis, is this property actually functioning as a farm resort today? Like, is it open for business and running?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Deputy Mayor Huntley and members of council. To the best of my knowledge, there is some agricultural activity on the property in that the farm is rented to an area farmer who does, there is some pasture land and some cropping occurring.
So just for clarification, then no would be the township's belief when it comes to the resort portion of the property, correct? Is the resort portion of the property functioning as a resort at the present time, given the planning situation that we're considering?
To you, Mayor Graham and members of council, I'm not sure if the farm resort is functioning right now. That would be a question better answered by the applicant or their agent. It's not permitted to function at this moment in time, given the official plan policies and zoning bylaw regulations in place. I can tell you that the farm resort is located in the farm building cluster. It is away from the most environmentally sensitive lands, but it is in the area that has, from the air photography indicates that it was previously pastured or cropped.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, for my recollection over the years, I don't think the property's ever been fenced to use as pasture. There is ground there that I know in the past was rendered hay crops, and I know that a local area guy does cash cropping, but I don't know when you refer to pasture if you're thinking there's livestock on the property. I don't believe it's ever been fenced for that purpose.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, there will be a fulsome report coming back to council at a later date, so you can, if questions do arise, but it's important now that we turn open the public portion of the meeting to hear from members of the public. So just so everyone's aware, if you'll notice, my little red light goes on when I hit the talk button. So I have to finish talking and take by hitting the red button or the blue button for the red light to light up. So anyone wishing to speak to the application, please approach the microphone. Press the red button when directed to do so, state your name and your address in the municipality, and then we'll hear from your comments and go one by one in order of fashion. Did I miss anything, clerk? Very good. So I hope that's intuitive for everyone, but we'll welcome the first speaker now if they'd like to come forward.
Not sure I'm the public that you're waiting for. My name is Bob Clark. I'm acting as the agent for the owners of this land. And what we are proposing is a use that will be secondary to the farming operation on the property, that it has not been functioning lately because there are a number of outstanding permits which are required. And in order to get the permits, we need the approvals that we're seeking here. It's my opinion that this is a reasonable use for this property, that yes, it was renovated, the barn was renovated, and I accept the staff position that there were permits required in advance of that. But as a planner, what I see here is a use which is secondary to the farming operation. We've done an environmental impact statement that indicates there is no environmental impact suggested. There is the opportunity here for a small scale, the word resort is a bit of a misnomer. It's a small scale operation which offers opportunity for individuals, including the members of the family of the owner, to be able to live on this property for a short period of time. That is our intention. There have been a number of other issues raised, and it's our fully intention to respond to those and prior to council making their decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good. We'll welcome any other members of the public wishing to speak to the application. Yep. Just approach the microphone. I'll hit my button off. So when I'm not lit, you can hit the button and then just state your name.
I'm Roy Murad. I'm the owner of 401 Algar. So let me take you through a little bit of history here, because I think there's a lot of back and forth that's really not factual. So first of all, this property was bought to be used by my family. I have a large family, 4 kids, 4 wives, 9 grandchildren. So the property was bought ostensibly to be used by my family, not to be used as a resort, but be used just for my family. When we buy something, we go and we do all the legal work to see if there's any liens or any CPLs or anything on the property that would, like you said, you can't sell a property with stop work orders or unforeseen orders or whatever it is. There were no work orders, completely clean. My lawyer sent a letter to the city requesting if there was any reason why this property was not permitted. They said everything was to order. We asked for a copy of the original permit. Apparently we were told at the time, the lawyer was told that there was a flood and we couldn't get a copy of the original permits. None of these buildings could have possibly been built without original permits. The trenching for the electrical transformers, enough transformer there for about 40 homes. So you couldn't have trenched for the transformer without a permit. You couldn't have trenched for the roads without a permit. You couldn't have trenched for those 3 buildings without a permit. What my lawyer did find out was that the septic tank was overflowing and was not in a state of proper repair. So we went back to the vendor and said, look, the septic tank doesn't conform according to our engineering reports. An older gentleman, he didn't want to do the repair. He reduced the price and said, you do the repair. We went to do the repair in the septic tank. We noted that there were pipes coming out from these 3 buildings because when we were excavating for the septic tank. Now, I should mention that I'm not usually somebody who's building buildings with septic tanks. So I didn't realize that we needed to, when we were altering the septic tank, we needed to get permission. So for me, I was looking at it as, hey, it's overflowing into the pond and into the area. I got to fix it. So we fixed it. In the process of fixing it, we see pipes going, electrical pipes and all other pipes going to the 2 other buildings. So we have 1 septic tank servicing 2 buildings, 3 buildings, plus electrical in the ground. It was read to me that somebody here decided that there was no floor, there was a barn, and all kinds of stories. There was a concrete floor, slab floor in that barn. There were walls in that barn exactly. And the barn was constructed as a hangar. It was square in the back and tubular in the front. It was less wide in the front. That's where the mechanics or the electrical, everything was actually directed to. So I'm not a magician. I don't know what the story is in terms of whatever happened, but the pipes were in the ground and needed to be fixed and needed to be repaired. The barn had a floor that was heaving in concrete, and he ran an airplane mechanic service or whatever inside there. I don't know what he was doing beforehand. All I know is I bought the property and this barn could not stand the way it was. So on the same plate, on the same floor plate, we took down the barn, put down a proper floor and built it up. Yes, I put too many bedrooms in there. I have too many grandchildren, so I put too many. Yes, I didn't get the permits. You've put me through a 4-year odyssey to get permits, and the odyssey has not been good. They have put stop work orders. I have accepted plans for the septic done by a qualified installer. Peterborough Help looked at those plans, liked the plans. They accepted my check, and then April 1st, Peterborough Health moved their requirement for septic to Cavan. And so therefore, those pits were waiting for final inspection are now open, waiting for final inspection. So we have tried, my wife and I have tried very hard to accommodate everything that everybody wanted. Yes, it was done ass backwards, sorry for the expression. But at the end of the day, all the permits were done, and we've done everything to remediate the property. The ponds that are there, we, with the help of environmental consultants, we remediated the ponds. The ponds were in very bad state, and we remediated everything. As far as fish coming from Baxter Creek does not go to my property overland. Baxter Creek feeds underground to the property, and no fish from Baxter Creek come into my pond. My pond is fed with, I put fish in there for the children to fish. There's some local, some bluegill and some sunfish, and the kids just fish there. There's nothing that comes in from the creek, and whatever report you want, we can get it for you. Okay, now, I can't do anything about the fact that I was a little bit zealous in doing the risk construction. I was very excited about getting this thing repaired, and we did the best we could, and we repaired it as best we could. I repeat again, there was no legal registrations. There was nothing on the property that said that there was a stop work order or anything from the city that said that the septic tanks were not up to speed or that the buildings were not up to speed. As far as the way this went on. So with the, I will address some of the other stuff. The stuff on the internet that everybody likes to throw out as gospel. The internet is nothing more than a repository of garbage. The internet, the reason why you see the property on the internet and the reason why you saw a listing is for me to get a mortgage. The problem is that in this type of property, in this community, it was very difficult to convince somebody to do a mortgage. They wanted a listing to establish value. And that's what all this was about, is to try to establish value to get a mortgage. During this whole period of time when there was a stop work order and there was all this thing, it was virtually impossible to get a mortgage on the property. So that's the reason for the activity that you see on the internet. That's the reason for Jane's Cottages. That's the reason for all this, is to establish some kind of value for the property so that it can be mortgaged. Okay, so I still have that issue, and I've been dealing with the increased costs stemming from the lack of permit, the lack of stop work orders, the lack of all this stuff that I've been put through for the last 4 years. I have to deal with that. Next item, delays. Okay. Mr. Phillips has have been so kind as to put the delays all on me and my family. I can tell you, I have emails, which I'm willing to submit to council, that show how aggressive we were to try to get some response from the council on our requests. We never wanted in the first place to have the zoning that we are applying for you in the first place. We wanted that we were legal conform use from previous years, and we were just continuing the use that was there on the property. It was suggested that this is it was suggested by planners that this is the zoning. They wanted some different zoning for the property. We went back and forth for years looking to guide some way of avoiding having to do this. It's my belief that the reason why that they put us through this process is to get all the documents on this property that they had lost previously in the flood from the previous permits. And so therefore now they have a complete report on this property from A to Z. As far as I'm concerned, the delays were never as a result of me and my family. We responded to every request that was done by John Connolly previously, every request made by Peterborough Health, every request by everybody. In some cases, it takes time to get certain reports. I understand that. But the delays for 4 years were not for my family. And I have evidence that the majority of the delays came from planning. Okay, so let me address the next thing. So I'm a new person to this community. I've invested money in buying a property, and I give work to people in the community, and we try to buy locally as much as we can. And we're here as a very large family and trying to be part of the community. Through this whole process, we have been issued stop work orders. Septic tanks are exposed. We had Kyle Phillips do a lawsuit asking to tear down all the buildings and tear down everything, which he only stopped because we had a submission in. The submission was in, and after the submission was in, he sued. Can you imagine? I understand you want to protect your area and you want to protect the people, but what makes me something so undesirable to you, me and my family? I brought my wife. She looks Canadian, right? So I'm hoping that you'll have some pity. I'm not being facetious here. Lawsuits, I only got them to retract it because I threatened a countersuit. Can you imagine? And all I'm trying to do is to try to live in this stupid property. As far as farm resort, let's talk about farm resort. Earl farms the property. Earl has been farming the property since God knows when. I don't know anything about farming, but Earl farms the property. As far as teaching, what we're teaching is the kids to look at nature, to look at farming. My kids' friends, not some ambiguous farm resort. It's my family that's using the property, my family's friends that's using the property. Money that I've generated? You wanted to ask that question. Money. I've generated no money. It's cost, and more cost. So at the end of the day, I never wanted to sell the property. In fact, I got ridiculous emails from John Connolly telling me this and telling me that. Look, I'm not here for gossip. You want to talk to me? Pick up the phone, call me. Nobody called me from the city when the entire group of them came to my front gate. Nobody bothered to call one call to me to say, hey, look, you built the buildings without permits, you're a stupid guy. Okay, I would have agreed with them. And I said, all right, you know what? You're absolutely right. Throw the book at me. But now you've punished me for 4 years. I'll give you whatever reports you want by the time the decision is done. But what's done is done. The buildings are there. You have all the heritage reports. You have all the reports you need. If you need more reports, I'll give you more reports. But these jealous neighbors and these other people are not going to stop the fact that this has been built. My family's using it. My family will continue to use it, irrespective. So I'm asking you to stop putting me through this rigmarole to let me live my life in peace, let me be a good neighbor in this community, and let me continue. Everything I said here is factual. I can give you the emails from Connolly. I can give you all the factual reports, the pictures of the hole in the ground and the pictures of the pipe coming out. You can speculate all you want that there wasn't a living, but there was electrical, there was plumbing, and whether you like it or not, somebody used that place. Now, I don't know. They seem to know a lot more about my property than I do. But I can tell you that I took pictures. I know what I bought, and there were no work orders. 3 buildings were already being used. The ponds were already there. The farming area was already there. It was already be farmed. I am walking on this property, and all I did was renovate it, make it livable for my family, and continue to use it exactly the way it was used before. Of course, I don't have a plane, but everything else was used the way it was before. I cannot be subjected to innuendo and gossip. Fact on the ground. The fact is, everything I'm saying is true.
I got it. Don't worry. I got you. Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to come forward. Again, same process. State your name, address.
Hi, my name is Celia Hunter. I live at 581 Elgar Drive, Millbrook. I've lived there since 1988. I've been on the property, the subject property, a number of times from about 1989 until about 2015. Can state that it was a single family dwelling house with 2 bedrooms because I got a tour and a couple of outbuildings and a lovely vegetable garden where what is described as a barn now sits. I understand a barn is a large farm building used for storing grain, hay, or straw, or for housing livestock. So to use the word barn seems a little disingenuous. I'm speaking to the application to have this zoned for a farm resort. And I just want to keep it very simple. The specifications are that the farmer live on the land, on the property, and be the one, or one of his family, be the one that is engaging in instructing or engaging people in agricultural pursuits. There is no farmer living on this land. There is a farmer nearby who leases several fields for cropping. There is no resident farmer. And I did notice, I think 3 times in the report, that there's reference to the tenant farmer. And I just wonder if we can get clarification on that description, because I think a tenant farmer, and I looked it up, where did I write it? A tenant farmer has to be living on the property. That's the definition of a tenant. So a tenant farmer lives on the property. So there is no tenant farmer. There is a neighbor farmer who does not live on the property. I think the rest of it is all in your report. I think Ms. Ellis's report is fantastic, really well researched. As a ratepayer who has a building inspector come out when one rebuilds one's deck, I am kind of confused that somebody wouldn't know enough to get or inquire as to whether they would need building permits. And I understand that there were no building permits and no permits for septic ever applied for. Anyway, thank you very much.
I've learned how to navigate my magic button. I'm still getting the hang of it. Thank you for that, Ms. Hunter. Ms. Ellis, I want to receive more comments from the public, but if you could add that, the clarification with regards to the designation of the farmer or a non-farm diversified use, if it's only exclusive to the farmer for the purposes of the final report, that would be very helpful, I think, in understanding the definition and the allowances there. So we'll get that answer in the report that comes forward at a later date. But again, there's more members of the public, so we'd like to hear from you now if you're so willing. Going once.
My name is Arkady Baikovsky, and I live on 686 Carmel Line. And my property abuts to Mr. Murad's property. And I think we have pretty clearly expressed our position in our submission. So the only thing I want to do is to respond to some of the statements that Mr. Murad has just made. I'm one of those envious neighbors or jealous neighbors, whatever. So regarding you see, we bought this property in 1987 together with our friends. In 1988, early 1988, the property was severed. And because our friend had a plane, he wanted the 50 acres as a landing strip. So they got 150, we got 100. And at that point, on the property, there were three structures: totally dilapidated old farmhouse, which was on the verge of collapsing, and the barn, which was located on the other side of the farm road, was in absolutely horrific state. The place which Mr. Murad calls a barn, there was basically a tool shop and a garage, you might call it. Now, for a period of time, our friends kept their farm equipment, such as lawnmower, such as trail cutter, and an automobile that they acquired on auction somewhere. It was an old Army Willys. At that point, his airplane was kept at Buttonville. So couple of years later, he brought the plane to the property, and a neighbor of ours who actually used to live across the road from us by the name Brad, he rebuilt this shed and made it into a hangar. So that's what it was. And the concrete pad was, yes, in fact, was done by our friend, and only because of the plane to keep it on the even sort of a position. The barn was eventually taken down, and the good pieces, whatever was left of it, which means the beams and some of the barn boards, were used in the house, because our friends, and I understand this history may be totally irrelevant, but I would like to clarify some things. So the farmhouse was taken down
And because our friend wanted to build something on the stone foundation, she was very fond of it. And a fellow from town, Art Follis, opened it on the periphery of the house, and they cleaned it up and so on. So at that time, he took down the barn, and whatever was left of it was buried there. Okay, and basically it's right behind the old milk house, which is now also a little house there. So I just wanted to clarify, it's not a lie, it's not that's what is factual. So the shed was never a barn. I know we're talking definitions, but just for the clarity's sake. The rest, as I said, is in my submission already. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Still open to the public? Going once? Yeah, you can register to speak again, no problem.
The main house never had 2 bedrooms like this lady says. The main house, when we bought it, has 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, okay? All this hearsay is making my head spin. The main house already had the bedrooms, already had the bathrooms, already had the septic tank. The pipes went from the septic tank on that hill to the main house to the other 2. I'm speaking to the other 2 locations. Electrical and plumbing went to the other 2 locations. That's determined, in my view, that there were people that were there that needed to use the locations. So it never had 2 bedrooms. It always had 5. It always had 5 or 6 bathrooms. I can't remember how many. As far as my not living on the property, this property is a place where my family congregates. We're supposed to congregate on the weekends, in the summer. It's supposed to be like a cottage place for 20 people. That is my basic family. And then my extended family, which extends to 40 people. It can't be in a small place. It has to be in a bigger place. And no, we don't live there all day long, but we're there often enough. Okay? We don't disturb anybody. The place is at the end of a cul-de-sac. We don't bother anybody. We don't do anything. All we do is we bring business to the community. We employ 9 contractors to work on the place. And so at the end of the day, this is not being characterized as it should be, that it's just simply a family location where people can spend their time.
Okay. The public meeting is still opened. Any members wishing to come forward? Just state your name and address. Sir.
Hello, my name is James Steigerwald. I live at 583 Carmel Line. I believe the reason we're all here is because there's been a proposed zoning amendment, which we may have lost track of in the discussion. We welcome Mr. Moran to the community. We're very pleased that him and his family enjoy this community. It seems that he is already enjoying the community under the current zoning. So our concern, I think I speak to many of the other neighbors, is could this zoning change or amendment lead to future development and impact our way of life in that community? Is it possible for us to get back on topic in regards to the amendment and what that can potentially lead to in the future in terms of future development, whether it be commercial or residential? Thank you.
So with regards to this, I mean, it's a public meeting. We're here to take public commentary regardless of the content. There's not, we'd like to keep it on subject, but I think we've done fair enough so far. So the only other, if you don't mind, sir, just to, I don't want to make a big deal, but if you could remove your hat when you're in the chamber, that's all. If you don't mind, just out of respect. No, I don't mean to make a big deal of it, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to come forward to speak? If not, going once, going twice, sold. Thank you very much for everyone to come forward and making time to come in and have a discussion with that, with regards to that. Council, the consideration of the report, the two recommendations are as follows. Excuse me, I just have to catch back up. Thanks, sorry about that. No problem. So the two recommendations are the council review and consider all verbal and written comments received at the public meeting, and that the draft official plan amendment and zoning bylaw be presented to council at a future date for consideration. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councilor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. We need a resolution to close the public meeting. Moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Moving on, our next item, and thank you for waiting for us, ladies. It is, I believe, the delegation concerning the butterfly. We got one. Oh, sorry, excuse me, I'm out of line. The next is a presentation from Moya Taylor with regards to asset management and the PSD citywide asset management plan. I believe she's joining us remotely.
Hello.
Just with regards to, we need order in the chambers. Sorry, excuse me. There's just not public. We need to move on with the meeting with regards to that and with recording. Sorry. Cheers. Moya, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Excellent. Thank you for waiting. And by all means, please commence your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Moya Taylor. I'm an asset management advisor with PSD Citywide. I've been working closely with the municipal staff to develop this 2024 compliant asset management plan. I first want to thank the staff for their cooperation as we work through this project. Today, I will be reviewing the updates that have been made for this iteration of the AMP to ensure it meets legislative requirements for July 1st, 2024. Next slide, please. So just to give some background, Ontario Regulation 58817 requires that all municipalities in Ontario deliver asset management plans in 2024 and 2025. This AMP has been updated with added levels of service, and this presentation is provided to council for information. Cavan Monaghan's asset management plan is in compliance with OREG 58817, which allows from data from 2 calendar years prior to the year in which all information is required and is included in the AMP. And the previous AMP reported on financial data up to December 31st, 2022. So therefore, there is no change to the financial data in this update. Next slide, please. So Ontario Regulation 58817 has defined requirements for 3 AMP iterations, the first of which was required by July 1st, 2022. This included measuring current levels of service, asset inventory analysis, current performance of assets, life cycle activities, and costs to maintain current levels of service, and also the impacts of growth on current levels of service for your core assets. Core assets include roads, stormwater, water, sanitary, and bridges. The township has met these requirements with the last iteration of their AMP. With the completion of this AMP, the township has achieved full compliance with July 1st, 2024 requirements. These are the same as the 2022 requirements. However, this time the non-core assets are also included. Non-core assets include facilities, fleet, and land improvement assets. In 2022, the township actually went a step further to perform an inventory analysis and document life cycle activities for non-core assets. Therefore, in order to meet 2024 compliance, all that was required was to include the current levels of service for non-core assets. July 1st, 2025 has additional requirements. These include proposed levels of service, proposed performance of assets, life cycle activities, and costs to achieve proposed levels of service, and also an update to the financial strategy and impacts of growth on proposed levels of service. Next slide, please. So to start, I'd like to give some context on what asset management is. Asset management is service management. Municipalities exist to provide a service to the township. For example, the roads move people and goods. The water mains and treatment plants provide drinking water, and ditches and culverts provide properties with flood protection. Next slide, please. In practice, the goal of asset management is to manage infrastructure at the lowest total cost and risk to meet the desired level of service. It's important to understand that construction and procurement costs are only a fraction of the total costs that assets have throughout their life cycles. So strategies should be developed to manage these costs and balance the trade-offs between risk, cost, and performance. These include risk assessments, financial needs and strategies, and levels of service. Next slide, please. Because this AMP focused on including levels of service for the non-core assets, I want to touch on what levels of service are and how we work to define the levels of service metrics that the township has chosen to monitor for their non-core assets. The level of service is a coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from their assets. The parameters that we can use to determine the level of service of a particular system or network include the cost. So how much will it cost the township to replace or repair a given asset? And when will that cost be required? Performance, what is the current output or condition of the asset? Is it in poor shape? And risk, what is the potential risk of the asset failing and who will be impacted if it were to fail? Next slide, please. So the formal definition of levels of service is parameters or a combination of parameters which reflect social, political, environmental, and economic outcomes that the organization delivers. In simpler terms, levels of service in a municipal context is a measure of the service outcome that the community receives. Next slide, please. So in order to measure levels of service, we work together with the township staff to develop a framework that we use for tracking and evaluating levels of service. This framework includes centralized performance measurements and trend analysis. Next slide, please. So this just shows typically what our level of service framework looks like, and I'm going to go into detail about all the components in the following slides. Next slide, please. The first step to developing the level of service is to determine what our core values are. So the core value are what the public values in the service that you provide to them. Examples of core values include accessibility of services to customers who require them, reliability, that services are provided with minimal disruptions and meet customer needs and expectations, safety, so services are delivered with minimal health, safety, and security risks. Services meet regulatory compliance, affordability of services for both the organization and the customer, and sustainability, so ensuring that plans are in place that services are available to customers in the future. Next slide, please. Once a core value has been identified, we look at defining the level of service statement. The level of service statement provides a high-level description of what the municipality is committing to provide to the community. It links to the technical and community performance measures. In this example, safety and regulatory compliance was chosen as the core value for facilities. The level of service statement is that facilities are safe to use and do not pose a hazard to others. So the township is committing to provide safe facilities to the community. Next slide, please. Next, we're able to develop the community level of service based on the level of service statement. A community level of service is a qualitative measure or description of how the community experiences the service. In this example, we're looking at the safety and regulatory compliance of facilities. Our level of service statement is talking about how they are safe to use and not posing a hazard to others. So in order to quantify that or qualify that, we have inserted the description of the facility's health and safety inspection processes. Next slide, please. So finally, the technical level of service can be developed. Technical levels of service are key performance indicators that measure how the municipality is performing. They may or may not impact what the customer is directly experiencing, but they do provide insight into asset management planning. In this example, in order to quantify the safety and regulatory compliance of the township's facilities, they have chosen to measure the percent of buildings that are inspected monthly for safety and the percent of buildings that are in AOTA compliance. Next slide, please. This methodology was used to develop several levels of service measures for each of the non-core asset categories. Once the framework was established, the township was able to measure the current level of service for each of the chosen descriptions and technical metrics. Measuring levels of service for core infrastructure was required in July 2022. The current level of service for non-core infrastructure was included in this iteration of the AMP to meet July 2024 requirements. So there were no qualitative descriptions or technical metrics that were mandated by the province for non-core assets. There was for core assets. So the municipality was able to determine themselves which descriptions and metrics they felt were beneficial to include. Next slide, please. So to summarize, some key takeaways from the AMP are that this iteration now meets 2024 compliance. Further improvements will be required for 2025. The AMP represents a snapshot in time. So like I mentioned, it's based on data from December 31st, 2022. This is in compliance, which allows for data for up to 2 calendar years prior. The AMP should not collect dust, and it is a centralized source of asset information and township practices. It should be used as a communication tool for staff, council, and public. Next slide, please. So looking at our next steps, we do have to start reviewing and refining the asset inventory for 2023. The next iteration of the AMP, the 2025 compliance, will use data from December 31st, 2023. So it will be important to prioritize the recommendations from the last AMP and to work towards increasing accuracy and competence in the data. Also, we will work towards developing proposed levels of service for the 2025 AMP. This will include engaging staff and public to determine levels of service targets and developing a life cycle and financial plan to meet those proposed targets. Finally, I would like to note that there is a small clerical error on page 15 of the AMP document. The first sentence under Kevin Monaghan's climate profile, it initially referenced Lake Erie, and this verbiage was carried through from the last iteration of the AMP, but in order to provide a more accurate description of the municipality's geographical location, the first sentence has been revised. It now reads, the township of Kevin Monaghan is located in southern Ontario within the county of Peterborough. An updated AMP was provided, and I believe this is also going to be addressed in the finance report. The remainder of the information in this section has not changed. Thank you all very much for your time. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you for walking us through that, Moya, and for all the work from yourself and staff in going through and keeping us updated and consistent with the evolving legislation timelines. Questions, members of council, with regards to the presentation? There is a report further on that further expands upon the subject matter with asset management. But while we have Moya, I thought we'd take the opportunity to answer any questions from the expert. It looks like you're going to get off fairly easy today, Moya. Thank you very much for that, walking us through asset management. And the recommendation with regards to this presentation is that we just receive the presentation for information. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks again, Moya.
Thank you.
And with that, we do move on without further ado to 10.1. With regards to the David Suzuki Foundation, the Butterfly Way project, and Christina is here to present today. Christina, welcome.
Thanks for listening to my presentation today. Is there the updated slideshow? I did request I added a few more slides and took some away.
So with regards to that, yes, there was a few updates to the slideshow, so we need a motion of council to receive that updated information. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Very well. We'll get the clerk to put that up just now, just a second.
Thank you. So welcome everyone to my presentation. My name is Christina Rennick and I'm from the Butterfly Way project with the David Suzuki Foundation. And this is my friend Lois. She has her own Butterfly Way project in the Kawartha Lakes region, and she just came to support me. Next slide. The David Suzuki Foundation Butterfly Way project is a citizen-led movement growing highways of habitat for bees, butterflies, and birds across Canada. Next slide. So being a representative for the Butterfly Way project, we're called Butterfly Rangers, and we're one of 350 new this year. What a ranger does is support friends, family, and neighbors and community to create habitat gardens. And there's a ripple effect because we're the facilitators, and then many people get involved. So this is Shelley Lamb, and I just did a couple of her gardens for the Blocks and Blooms event last weekend. And I've already started on a few more private gardens. My goal is to create a Butterfly Way, which means 12 habitat gardens within Cavan Monaghan within the same proximity. The gardens can be public or private. And today I'm asking for funding for a garden in one of our public spaces yet to be determined. Next slide. The history of The project started in 2017 in 5 Canadian cities. Now it's all across Canada, very popular. As of 2023, 106,300 native wildflowers and grasses planted, 7,200 habitat gardens, 2,900 trees and shrubs, and 119 butterfly ways. Next project, next slide. Just recently, June 14th, Butterfly Way was on the cover of the Hamilton Spectator. And here's an example of a public garden at a school, a raised bed in the shape of a butterfly. Next slide. Now, this isn't a butterfly way, but this is a slide that's a little bit of an inspiration for the garden I'm proposing. So originally, this ecosystem in Cabin Monaghan was tallgrass prairie, oak savanna ecosystem. So I'm proposing the garden to have at least 300 square feet of native wildflowers, native grasses, in addition to three to 5 native shrubs and 1 oak tree. Next slide. I included this slide because it has signage, and I'd also like to incorporate some really beautiful educational signage to help the public understand why native plants are important and how they support biodiversity, and maybe inspire others to plant their own native plants. Next slide. This is just an example of a private garden. Next slide. So the renowned conservationist entomologist Douglas Tallamy says there are 4 ecological services a habitat garden should be providing. They must support a diverse community of pollinators throughout the growing season. What this would look like is to have at least 3 flowering flowers as well as flowering grasses, and every season it will not only look beautiful, but it supports a diverse community of pollinators. They must provide energy to the local food web. And as you see, there's a chickadee with a caterpillar. A chickadee will require 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise 1 clutch of babies in the springtime. And that seems like a huge amount of caterpillars. And caterpillars come from native plants. They must manage the watershed in which they lie, and they must remove carbon from the atmosphere. Next slide. So this is an illustration of tallgrass prairie and their root systems. And they obviously are very, very deep, very complex, and they keep the soil in place. They hold water in the soil. They filter out pollutants, and in this way, they manage the watershed. Now, if you see on the left-hand side, the little tiny root system, that is actually turf grass. And so you can imagine when a big rain comes in, the turf grass that we have so much of absorbs as much as it can, and then the water flows out into the watershed, taking with it fertilizers or pesticides if used on the lawn. Next slide. So these are just a few images, a few of them from my garden. So really just showing how there's an aesthetic component to habitat gardens. Everybody loves beautiful gardens. And in these days of climate change and biodiversity crisis, just being able to do something that actually has an effect, I think would be really good for mental health of just in general, and just everybody loves to enjoy a garden. Next slide. I won't spend too long, but there's a couple of headlines here. World Wildlife Fund in 2022 did a study, and they found that we've lost 70% of our animal population, including insects, since 1970. The New York Times in 2018 reported the insect apocalypse is here. So we have lost so many of our insects. Also, birds are on decline as well. Next slide. This is just a picture of some volunteers in the community, Butterfly Way Project. Next slide. So my funding request is for $5,000. In that, we'll pay for site preparation and maintenance. The site prep, I'd like to take place in the fall and then plan for a spring planting. The site prep is probably, depending on the spot, will be a smother technique. So you just need a whole bunch of cardboard, pile it with mulch or compost, and then just wait for it to smother the grass underneath. Purchasing native plants. I'm thinking 300 square feet for the garden, as well as areas for shrub and the tree. And this could be separated into a couple of different gardens, or it could be all in the same area and then have a larger garden. Third would be educational signage. And fourth, advertising. So for example, a write-up in the local paper to educate the public and recruit volunteers. Next slide. And just a few other things that I could help facilitate, educate the public to reduce or quit the use of pesticides and fertilizers. Consider replacing some of your lawn with native plants, because you know, grass still has its place and is wonderful. But if everybody could just put, would it be great to have a few native plants in every yard? Turn off lights as much as possible. This really interrupts the insect life cycle. Offer water to wildlife, such as a bird bath. Add a few large rocks or stumps for ground nesting bees. Report citizen science on an app like iNaturalist, which scientists take the data and they use it, put it to good use. And that's all for today. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you for that presentation, Christina. And yeah, I'm sure there might be a few questions. Members of council, any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, and thank you very much for this presentation. It's fantastic. I know most members of council know I have a bit of a passion for gardening myself, so I think the project is fantastic, and I wish you the best success. My question for you is, once a garden is built in a community, who maintains it over time? Like, is it volunteers that come out? Is it back to a township to take care of? Like, what's the life cycle of a garden once it's been put in place?
So I'm hoping that I will have volunteers in the town that will commit to maintaining the gardens. I know that Lance, you mentioned when we had a meeting that the town might also be able to maintain the town maintenance or the garden landscaping maintenance. But the thing with native gardens they're very different than a traditional garden. So I would be really, I'd be worried that maybe they would take their leaf blowers and blow away the leaves. Also, for the native plant garden, the plan is to keep all of the seed heads up during the winter to feed the birds, and also to make cover and protect other creatures. And then the cleanup actually takes place much later in the spring. And then the new plants start coming up. So my plan is to have volunteers. Yeah.
And I guess it's built on mostly perennials anyway, so it's kind of self-kept. Is that the concept as well? So it's fairly low maintenance as time goes on.
Native plants are definitely less maintenance than a traditional garden. They come already with their own built-in they've been developing for millennia in the area. So they already have a lot of resistance to all the pests and everything else. You just basically need to water them for the first season they're in the ground. And then after that, do not require any watering at all. Also, the aesthetic look of a garden is not, like mulch. Only for the first couple of years will there be mulch with plants, but then eventually you'll want the ground covers to fill in all those spots. And then in the fall, we'll pile some leaves in there. So there won't be the cost of bringing in mulch every year.
Thank you. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, when you mentioned there at one point, and just for clarity, you're talking about 350 rangers, I think, and new, and I didn't know if this program is brand new type of thing, or whether you added some to that 350. And then also, the fundraising you do here, does it stay in the community that raises the money, or does some of this go back to the society, and how that might work?
So the 350 rangers, that's actually across Canada. So, there's, I think just in our area, there's Lois and I, there's 4 people in Peterborough, but the 350 are all across Canada. It's been going since 2017. So since then, I think there's been 1,800 rangers, or no, how many rangers? Do you know? I think it's been 1,800 altogether. Yeah. And maybe more, yeah. And then in terms of, it definitely stays in the community. It will be a Cavan Monaghan project. Yeah.
Counselor Natchoff.
Thank you through you, Chair. Thank you, Christine. It's nice to see you again as well. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. Great presentation, really. I think this is a great idea, and having done research and seen other areas where this has already been implemented, I think that this could be not only like a good thing for the community itself, but as we discussed before, I could see like the actual tourism opportunities to tie into bringing people to our community specifically for this, similar to like we have our Blocks and Blooms tour, and we have the cycle path tour and Millbrook Valley Trails and stuff. So I can see just definitely like a good partnership that can be done, not just with the township, but as we discussed with the trails. And so it's interesting. Hopefully we get the support of everyone to continue wherever this goes. And yeah, so I just wanted to make the comment, and bigger picture kind of thing. I think this is a really good thing to kind of consider to bring to our community. Thanks.
Counselor Byrne.
Through the chair, one question about the trees. Does this tie into any other programs, like the federal government's talking about planting millions, and Trees for Canada with the Scouts and different organizations for conservation, and all have different tree programs? Do you coordinate with any of that at all? And the other one thing that kind of spiked my interest, if you plant an oak tree in the middle of this garden that's only 300 square foot, when that tree's mature, there'll be 300 square feet of shade that nothing will grow under. Just curious.
Well, actually, the plan would be to have it's separate from the garden. So as part of my vision would be the tall grass prairie oak savanna, and the garden would be more of a meadow tall grass prairie. There would be a separate area with an oak tree with maybe a little understory garden underneath it, but only as big as it is. And then as the tree matures, the understory garden will become its own garden and need maintenance, but that will be years and years down the and the shrubs will also not be part of that 350 square feet. They'll have their own separate, they'll all be, around the edges. And as far as connected to the other programs, we're actually not connected to those programs. This is its own program. Yeah.
Counselor Natchoff.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Another question, I know you and I hadn't discussed this previously, but I know that you've approached Cavan Monaghan as the township, and then there's the other townships that make up the Peterborough County. Have you reached out to any of those other ones? Because this could definitely, I could foresee this as being like a kind of regional thing, where maybe we may be the first of a domino effect of view, like, this has been a success in Cavan Monaghan and on to Selwyn and all the other surrounding ones. So have you had a chance to think that big already, or not yet?
Yeah, we actually had a meeting with Steve. Do you know Steve's last name? I forget it. We had one Zoom with him and the 3 others in Peterborough, and he's definitely starting a Butterfly Way in Peterborough, and all of them are involved in their own little projects. So yeah, we're already making those connections, and then Lois is up in the Kawartha Lakes region, and hopefully, yes, it will have a ripple effect. Yeah. Yeah, I'd also maybe like to add or ask to get bench donated or something like that, or maybe as part of the budget. So there's a little seating area for people to sit and view the garden.
Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, I guess the last question I have for you is the Butterfly Way, which you say is 12 or more habitats or gardens in close proximity. What's considered close proximity? Is that like a couple square miles, a couple blocks? Thank you.
So actually, proximity really just means the area, the whatever it's called. So in this case, will be the Cavan Monahan Butterfly Way, and it really doesn't have to be like the yard next to another yard. As long as they're in this area, so it's quite a vast area. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I think my suggestion would be that we receive the presentation for information and defer financial considerations to budget so that we can consider that project. So we won't make your fall deadline this year. We don't have any monies associated to the project in this year's budget, but we can have that discussion in next year's budget when we come forward in the fall. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Byrne, seconded by Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Thanks very much for all your presentation and good luck and continued success. Absolutely. Thank you. So with that behind us, we are now at 11, section 11 in the 11.1 is the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 3rd, 2024, and the minutes of the special council meeting held November 30th. There was a slight omission that we had missed these minutes, so that's why they're in there in case anyone has any questions. So the motion being that these minutes be approved as presented. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? Those minutes are approved. First report on does just before we get to that report, is that council okay? Because we still have a hearty agenda before us, but if anyone needs a bio break, we might do it now versus continuing to move on because we will be seated for probably another 2 hours. Just okay. If anyone does, I'll probably need it before then, but we'll continue with the reports for now. Ms. Pope, report 12.1 asset management planning update.
Thank you. As per Moya's presentation earlier, this is specifically to update the levels of service. We as a municipality have been working in advance of the deadlines up till today's date. We did have a small period of time where we weren't able to move as quickly as we wished. However, we're back on track and we're still meeting the legislative deadlines. Specifically, just if we could scroll down on page 1 just slightly into where it highlights the sections. That's great. Thank you very much. So there are basically 6 pages where it references the levels of service on the AMP that have been updated in the draft that we will post to the website once council approves it today. All other pages remain the same except for the one edit that Moya spoke to where Lake Erie was incorrectly referenced, and that will be updated with the County of Peterborough and Lake Ontario. So technically 7 pages in total. However, it is just levels of service. We are continuing and we're pleased that Moya will be staying with us as we progress through the next phase of the AMP to complete and bring back another report next year, July 1st, 2025, with a complete AMP and all of the legislative requirements completed at that time. So therefore, I have this report before you, just basically highlighting the levels of service aspect, no changes to financials because we had brought those in advance. And the audit is just awaiting the ARO, which is the asset retirement obligation portion. You'll see the auditors in September. And after that, we'll be able to start then analyzing the 2023 data for inclusion in our AMP.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. One question, having been around for a little while we've been trying to get and implement fully the asset management plan with all of the technical specification. So the only deadline I remember seeing as the last deadline is this sort of 2025 phase 4. Is there like obviously there's ongoing management maintenance with regards to pursuing and ensuring, but are we to expect kind of that once the phase 4 inclusion of all of our assets and levels of service are in there, are we expecting it's being more of a management, or are there additional thresholds that just haven't been alluded to yet by the province that we're going to be required to hit? Because I've never seen anything past 2025, and lo and behold, we're almost there. So I'm just curious if there's more to come.
That is an excellent question. So just like any of the other studies that we do for the municipality, there's often a renewal somewhere between 3 and 5 years. Although they are not saying to date, and you are correct, that legislatively they're only announcing up to 2025, because it is a condition to have your asset management plans updated and maintained in order to receive eligibility for grant programs. I am expecting there to be future legislative deadlines for updates to council, but I don't know what the province has in store at this time.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Here, questions, members of council. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to Ms. Pope, on 301, you talk about meetings with the CAO and the director of finance with council. Will that be something we need to request? Will that be a one-on-one type of situation? And I was just wondering for that second draft meeting. Oh, sorry, my mistake then.
Questions, other members of council with regards to this report? If not, the two recommendations with regards to the asset management planning update are that council receives for information the updated asset management plan, which includes the added levels of service requirements by the legislative deadlines of July 1st, and the council approves the posting of the updated plan to the municipal website. Can I get a mover and a seconder for those? Oh, excuse me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and the rest of council, can we amend number 2 to say that council approved the posting of the amended updated township of?
I believe we can make that adjustment. So the amended asset management plan to the municipal website with that correction alluded to earlier. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley and seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Pope. You are up again with regards to the finance, capital, and operating budget timetable for and 2025 council meeting schedule. Ms. Pope.
Thank you. I have before you an operating budget timetable, which has changed slightly. We are trying to move our deadlines up. So we are proposing within this draft to move forward the first presentation to council to be in November with hopeful approval of the final budget in January of 2025 instead of February. So we basically in the schedule moved back about 4 weeks in total in order to achieve that. The dates are highlighted within the budget timetable. I am happy to discuss them in more detail if you'd like. And in partnership, I am presenting as well with the clerk, Cindy Page, with regards to the council meeting schedule, because obviously if we're passing a budget schedule, we also need to include the 2025 council meeting dates as well. So therefore, this is before you. It does look a little bit different. So I just ask that you do take a look at these changes in our dates, because it does change when we come back to council. Rather than coming the beginning of December, we're coming the end of November. Rather than having our 2 meetings in January and February, we're doing both of them in January, just for clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. I know the county is doing a similar adjustment to bring the budget or the financial considerations for the budget forward as well. So this lines up well. Questions with regards to the report? If not, there's 3 very basic recommendations: that we approve the 2025 capital operating budget timetable and that council approve the meeting schedule, and that we approve the amendment to the 2024 council meeting schedule to add the special budget meeting for Thursday, November 21st, 2024, starting at 9 a.m. Moved by Councilor Byrne, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you, Ms. Pope, but don't go too far because you're up again with regards to the finance 2024-09 funding agreement for the renewed Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the gas tax. 12.3. Ms. Pope.
Thank you. This is for information. The Canada Community Building Fund, which used to be referred to as the federal gas tax grant. As you recall, at first draft budget, we didn't know the dollar values at the time of posting, and the information was available to us for our second meeting, which happened in January, where we were advised that we were receiving $314,904.25, which was incorporated in the capital budget for public works and roads projects. They have officially now signed, as of April, the notification went out. They've officially assigned now a 10-year agreement as of June the 5th or 6th of June. and have circulated it to the municipalities. So they actually have online, you can see posted up to 2028, the values that I will bring forward each year during the budget for discussion and allocation purposes. And then this is a 10-year agreement committing to this project remaining in place. And this is basically before council for the funding project to be known and to sign the bylaw 2024-40 as attached.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Just a question of clarity with regards to the last comment. So it is, I noticed that it's a 10-year agreement now, so it's a 10-year commitment to continue dispersing the funds. So is that from 2024 to 2034? And then I might have a follow-up.
I believe it is a 10-year program, and because they had to renew this year, they're including the 2024 year in that, yes.
So there's a commitment for a continued disbursement of funds past 2028, but for what I can understand, a myriad of reasons, they're not committing to what that number will be beyond 2028. Is that the appropriate reading of the document? I just wasn't sure if there's someone I could go and look for the initial years of funding.
Usually in the past, they've given us 4 years of allocation notice. So then we would know for the next 4 years. Because we're already in 2024 and they were signing in 2024, I believe that's why they did the 2025 to 2028. But they usually do in advance give that to us. So we're not waiting like this last year, which was unusual. We usually see that 4 years in advance.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Questions? Deputy Mayor Hunley.
Through you, Chair, to Ms. Pope. Is there any factors that could change what these fundings are that come into us? Like you see it increases, but then it sort of plateaus in 2027. I mean, if there's an influx of population or a deflux or like, are there factors that can adjust these numbers, or are these set in stone at this point?
So up to 2028, historically, the way that they've delivered the fund is they have been in stone. So the allocations have been what they are, but then they do a pickup. So they take a look at the FIR and all the details. The asset management plans are coming into this as well, and statistics. So when they combine all those items and then they look at the next 4 years, the allocation could go up or could go down, and it depends on the funding envelope that they have. So what they currently had, they said over the next 5 years, they could invest 4.7 billion. And that was distributed in Ontario, 895 million in 2024-25. So it does depend on the envelope that's available, and then also the details that are out there as filed by the FIR by each municipality to determine our allocation portion.
Other questions, members of council? If not, the 2 recommendations of the report are just that we receive the renewed 10-year municipal funding agreement for the administration of the CCBF, and the council authorizes staff to sign the MFA, and submit bylaw number 2024-40 to the Association of Municipalities CCBF team. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. I need to take a 2 or 3 minute break, so we're gonna take a short break and be right back to get back into business. Thank you. Okay, we will reconvene the meeting at, what time have we got? 2:48. Next item is 12.4, report Parks and Facilities 2024-02, development of conceptual design and site plan for a downtown park. Chris Allison will be presenting. Chris.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I have before you Parks and Facilities Report 2024-02. The recommendation is the council award the development of a conceptual design and site plan for a downtown park and a Cabin Monaghan Community Center to Landscape Planning Limited for $46,745 plus HST, $6,076.85 for a total bid of $52,821.85. Landscape Planning Limited was the second lowest proposal submitted. Under the Parks and Recreation Plan, Phase 3 of the 2024 capital budget, $70,000 has been allocated towards this project. Landscape Planning Limited brings over 50 years of landscape architectural services to both public and private sectors, ranging from smaller parks up to a $30 million recreation complex. If approved by council, the project will begin immediately with data gathering and analysis, followed by stakeholder engagement and conceptual site layout. Public engagement and outreach will take place in October with a public information session, survey, and commenting period. A preliminary site plan draft presentation will be presented to council. Revisions and final site plan preparation will follow with updates to cost estimates and phasing plan. Final versions of the new downtown park and CMCC plan will be presented to council in December.
Thanks for that, Chris. Nice to see a number, or at least a competitive bidding process, and several actually under budget. So that's excellent. Questions, members of council? Okay, if seeing none, we are just awarding the tender as it mentions in the recommendation that council award the development of a conceptual design and site plan for a downtown park and Cabin Monaghan Community Center to Landscape Planning Limited for the amount enclosed. If there's no questions, we can take a mover for that motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Allison. Moving on, next we have the CIP grant program recipients. As Councillor Natchoff mentioned earlier, he's going to recuse himself for this report, so we'll just give him a second. And then Drew, I might ask you to just bring it to Councillor Natchoff's attention when we're done the summation of the discussion for 12.5. Is that okay? It'll just be in there. Not to add to your burden, Drew, but I thought you could handle that. Not that I'm directing staff, just a request. Thank you. Very good, Ms. Hyatt. We'll go to you for the consideration of the report.
Thank you, Mayor. The report 2024-31 is before council. The 2024 Community Improvement Plan Grant Program recipients with two recommendations. The first one, that council accept the proposed 2024 Community Improvement Plan Grant recipients as presented, and that $34,400 be allocated from the CIP incentives capital budget. And number two, that council directs staff to do a second intake of the Community Improvement Plan Grant Program to further allocate the remaining $25,318.
Thank you, Ms. Hyatt. Questions, members of council, with regards to the CIP? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, I'm just curious, this next opening, that'll be township wide still? Or are we going back to the idea that it was going to toggle from Millbrook only?
Through Chair, no, it would be open to everybody. Yeah, township wide.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Ms. Hyatt, were there applicants that didn't make this cut that we're opening, that would be opened eligible for the new opening, or would we be looking for new applicants for the next round?
Through you, Chair, to Deputy Mayor, both actually. There were two that I think, as noted in the report, there were two that had merit. They were just lacking a bit of information. So with council, if council approves to do a second intake, we would work with those two to ensure that they have a successful application in the second round. And there were two that we did a consultation with.
But they didn't submit an application, so we would certainly reach out to encourage them to submit an application, and it would be open to anyone else.
Very good. Other questions, members of council? If not, the two recommendations in the report are that we accept the proposed 2024 Community Improvement Plan grant recipients as presented, and $34,400 be allocated from the Community Improvement Plan Incentives Capital Budget. And the second being that council directs staff to do a second intake of the CIP grant program to further allocate the remaining $25,318. I'll take a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Hyatt. Drew, if you could do me that favor, I'd very much appreciate it. Forever in your debt. We'll just give a minute for Councilor Natchoff to join us. The next report for consideration of council is report PEB 2024-33 Tower Hill North Subdivision Agreement. Ms. Ellis.
Mayor Graham, members of council, planning report 2024-33 is before you today with two recommendations. The first being that council recognize Sutherland Street, Highlands Boulevard, Lamb Street, Bruce Street, Gibson Gate, Lillico Lane, Hampton Crescent, Saradine Crescent, Downer Street, Clarity Street, and Robson Street as the street names for subdivision application 15T-21003, otherwise known as the Tower Hill North subdivision. And secondly, that bylaw number 2024-39 be approved to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the subdivision agreement between Tower Hill Developments, Inc. and the Corporation of the Township of Cavan Monaghan with the insertion of final financial numbers and other minor edits authorized by the township solicitor and or CAO.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. It's been many years of back and forth with regards to this proposed subdivision. So this is the final stage of approvals with regards to the subdivision agreement. So it's nice to see it moving forward. Questions, members of council? Councilor Burn.
Through the chair. We talked earlier with the CAO, so I understand that the agreement, the way it stands, they've actually offered more park space than would be legislated by the Ontario government. What I was curious about was the setbacks on County Road 10. Where Highland's going to meet County Road 10 somewhere in the future. Are those setbacks large enough to allow for possible expansion? Because the County Road 10, we're getting more work done south of the village. They did quite a bit north of the village, and there's still work to be done in downtown Cavan to put probably streetlights in. So I just wonder what those setbacks are, if they're in place for that kind of progress.
Ms. Ellis.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, I will speak to the planning process, and maybe Mr. Hancock could speak to the actual numbers. So through the plan of subdivision planning process, there is a circulation requirement. So Peterborough County Public Works would have reviewed the application, would have provided comment to make sure that the approved plan meets their requirements now and into the future. So to the best of my knowledge, everything is in order. There was draft plan issued. We have conditions. The conditions are now being fulfilled. This is the last step. And so for phase one anyway, we are in order, and everything is appropriate to the best of my knowledge.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byrne. First of all, the county has, of course, the Public Works Department at the county has approved the interim design of County Road 10. They've looked at the ultimate design, and it will be accommodated within the right of way that they've established. So we've been working with them very closely on that. So the setbacks on the property related to road widening, et cetera, has already been established and is taken into account on the plan. So everything as we have it today has been approved by the Public Works Department at the county.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Other questions, members of council? No preferred street names? Okay. Well, I've learned the vetting process that goes through, and I don't want to meddle in it anymore. So if there are no further conversations with regards to the report, we can move forward with the recommendations the council authorized. I will read them aloud. Recognize Sutherland Street, Highlands Boulevard, Lamb Street, Ruth Street, Gibson Gate, Lillico Lane, Hampton Crescent, Saradine Crescent, Downer Street, Flaherty Street and Robson Street as the street names for the subdivision application, and that bylaw number 2024-39 be approved to authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign the subdivision agreement between Tower Hill Developments, Inc. and the Corporation of the Township of Capmonigan with the insertion of final financial numbers and other minor edits authorized by the township solicitor and or CAO. Those are the recommendations for the report, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Miss Ellis. We'll move on to the bad boys, Wayne Hancock and Drew Hutchison. Report Public Works 2024-10 tender TPW 24-04 Lisa Court reconstruction. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, before you, we have Public Works Report 2024-10 with recommendations regarding tender T-PW-24-04 regarding Lisa Court reconstruction. The recommendations before you are as follows. Recommendation 1 is that council award the Lisa Court reconstruction tender T-PW-24-04 to Nick Carchidi Excavating Limited at the tender amount of $893,327. The total tender amount after net municipal HST is $909,049.56. Recommendation 2 is that council approve the contract administration of $48,960 and contingency of $94,228.70, totaling $143,188.70. The contract administration and contingency with net municipal HST is $145,708.82. The total project amount for the tender, the contract administration and contingency, including net municipal HST, is $1,054,758.38. Recommendation 3 is that council approve to reallocate the Public Works capital item for sidewalks of $10,000 and the surplus funds from the slurry seal capital item in the amount of $36,900 to reduce the deficit to $144,892.41. And recommendation 4 is that council approve the Lisa Court reconstruction in the capital budget, and staff are requesting an over expenditure in the Public Works capital budget to the upset limit of $145,000 to be funded through the 2025 CCBF allocation, which is the Canada Community Building Fund. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Drew. So this is a complicated tender because it involves multi-jurisdictional departments with it, and certain department portions were over budget and certain were under budget with regards to the tender. So there's a lot of financial acumen required to navigate sort of how all the allocation peters out. But at the end result is a deficit of about approximately $145,000. One of my questions may be for Ms. Pope, and apologies, Ms. Pope, I didn't ask you about this prior to, but if I recall the previous discussion, because it was very late, I think the last budget meeting where we found out what our CCBF allocation was going to be. But there was a discussion because there was a remainder in that account from previous year allocations. I don't believe we utilized the entirety of that remainder. So there is a slight, I believe there's a remaining amount even after the expenditures last year. Is that an ascertainable number for you to potentially have? Because I'm just, rather than suggest that as an allocation of the next year's CCBF, I would also, and I'm sure it's all in the same pool, so that doesn't really matter, but I would be curious as to know what is the remainder or carryover funds that are available from the gas tax that might be allocated rather than reducing the 2025 allotment, understanding that it's all the same money in the same account. Just for transparency purposes, would be nice to know as we're starting to think earlier about our budget process that instead of the 314, if we're cutting it by 145, but actually we have a remainder from the previous year, we are actually only looking at pre-allocating 100,000 or less of the next year's allocation of the gas tax. Is there any way you could provide that number to council? Just maybe not now, but at a future date that we can say that, oh, by the way, there is this remaining amount. And now that we know for the future years up until 2028, that we'll have this amount, we don't have that need to necessarily have that buffering for the gas tax funding. Does that make sense?
Definitely. We do have a draft number, but it's under review with the audit. We'll have the final number for you in September. We could wait till then if that's appropriate. I could look up the draft if you really needed it today.
Happy to wait until September for that and many other things. Thank you very much for that. And just a note as well, it says so in the report, but just so council's aware, if there are, as it alludes to in the text at the end of the financial analysis, if there are additionally any surplus funds from capital works and public works, that money would also be pre-allocated to this overage and try to reduce that commitment to next year's budget as well. That's my questions. Other members of council, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Huntley and then Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for putting the table together to try to make sense of this financial wizardry to get us to what we want. As I guess a comment being, the actual tender in its whole was only about 85,000 over budget. It's just the way you have to split it between public works and water and wastewater that kind of makes it the 145 number. So I understand and appreciate why that has to happen. My question though is around the splitting of the contract administration and the 10% contingency. It doesn't look like it's split proportionally between public works and water and wastewater, and the water and wastewater is carrying a larger percentage of that contingency and of that contract administration compared to the cost of their allocated tender. Is there a rhyme, reason, or wizardry behind that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Graham. Regarding the contract administration, typically with these projects, there's more of a requirement for inspections and testing for the underground work. So for the sanitary sewers and water main services. And that's typically how we would estimate how we split up the contract administration funds between the two budgets.
So follow up then. So what you're saying is it's not financially allocated, it's workload effort allocated rather than just taking 10% and applying. Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, I'm curious, in my little mind, I think that the work being done on Lisa Court in the future would be very similar to the work that was done on the Main Street reconstruction for all the underground gas, bringing back the curbs and the sidewalks or whatever. I was just curious in relationship to the distance that we're going to renew on Lisa Crescent to the distance divided by, I just wondered if they're close to the same costing, because I think they're similar work.
So just for clarity, so the distance that the project entails is the proportionality similar to Main Street. So a comparison by kilometer or by 100 meters, are we looking at roughly the same costing? Got it. Okay. Drew or Wayne, are you capable of speaking to that at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. There are a few differences on Lisa Court compared to Main Street. On Main Street, we were only replacing the water main. We didn't replace the sanitary during last year's project, as well as on Lisa Court, there is storm sewers and curb and gutter versus Main Street where it was storm ditches. So there is a difference in cost for estimating those projects, but we did see similar numbers. Obviously, the market changes for pricing. So some stuff we noticed was less than our project last year, and there were a few increases in different areas. But for the overall job, it was, we did think it was a reasonable price, and I think the way the market's going, it relates well to it.
Thank you, Drew. Seeing no other questions, there are 4 recommendations in the report. If council would behoove me, I will not read all 4 of them and all the technicality allowed. They're there for your perusal. Anyone have any issues with any of the 4 recommendations? If not, we can consider them all together. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for recommendations 1 through 4 in the report. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Drew and Wayne. But don't go too far. Wayne, you're up again with regards to Public Works 2024-11 Water Wastewater Service Agreement with the City of Peterborough, early termination 12.8. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, the recommendation before you is that council authorize staff to terminate the agreement between the corporation of the City of Peterborough and the Township of Cavan-Monaghan dated April 4th, 2022. In accordance with Article 6, Section 6.01D and Section 6.02 of the agreement. And this, just as a couple of comments on the report, this is the first step in us moving toward, this is a 1-year termination. So the termination does not take effect. It's stated in the report as the end of March 2025. It would be our intent to look at options once we have this termination put in place, to look at options of how we might run the facilities thereafter, both the option of in-house as well as contracted services. So we would report back on further processes and further comments on the operation, but this is the first step in terminating with the City of Peterborough. I think on both sides, the city they have agreed and they are in agreement with our report, and they have a report going to City Council at the same time. And they are finding it more difficult right now to look after our operations. The person that was in charge, our direct contact, is no longer with the city, and that's complicated things somewhat. And we are finding that in a number of cases that we are finding we're more and more involved, I guess, in the operations, and therefore it's our belief that we would be better to terminate and move forward with other options. So that's a recommendation before you.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. 2 questions. One, I understand Selwyn's gone through a similar transition. I believe they brought it in-house. Was that also prompted by the City of Peterborough, or was that, I'm assuming that the contracts are similar. I'm just not sure if who instigated the early termination or the termination at all.
To Mr. Mayor, the operation in Selwyn was operated by PUG. So they are in a process of being taken over by the city, and that process is to take place over the next year. So Selwyn has brought it in-house, and they are still being backed up by PUG operations in certain parts of at this time. But the overall picture is that it's all being brought in-house under Selwyn.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. I know there's well documented a lot of transitions going on with PUG at the moment, and it's been chaotic, so it makes some sense. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair to Mr. Hancock, in our discussion there, I get the idea that the City of Peterborough wants to get out of our deal. We want to get out of our deal. I'm a little bit scared, not knowing what the other options are before we move ahead with getting out of the deal. It may end on us automatically. I'm not sure. I'm very skeptical that we can afford to bring it in-house. I have no idea. I haven't seen any numbers from Selwyn. And the complexity of wastewater and water with all the regulations that the little bit I've been exposed to is crazy, to say the least. So I just wonder where that leaves us if we break the contract at this point in time, not knowing what we're going to do next.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byrne, first of all, I think there's a number of options still out there. One, there's a number of contract companies, Aqua, Viola, different companies that are available to take over the service if we do not want to bring it in-house. I think it's the onus is on staff to provide council with a financial analysis that indicates to you what the cost would be to bring it in-house versus outside contracted services. But there are a number of companies out there that still provide the service. So we're not worried in that light. I think there's lots of opportunity there. There's quite active. I mean, the industry is quite active. But I believe staff have a responsibility. I think our analysis have to prove to council what is the best process going forward. It may be even worthwhile to call for proposals and compare that to bringing it in-house as an option to see that the numbers are with, are completed in the marketplace so you have comparables. So I think that's one of the options that we're looking at. So we have a bit of work to do on this, but right now we need determination in order to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Other questions, but so is the expectation then you'll be coming back to council within the next 4 to 6 months with regards to this report? I mean, obviously, we don't want to leave it till the 11th hour, as Councilor Byrne mentioned. We want to have some, runway to in regards to consider and explore these options in more detail. Is that consistent with your thoughts, Mr. Hancock?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think it's part of our budget process anyhow. I think we have to provide for that. And I think it's analysis that we'll have to bring forward here for this fall for budget deliberations and discussions in regard to this service. So it would be within the next 2 to 3 months that we would try bringing reports back.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair to Mr. Hancock, would it be advisable at all at this moment in time when we're going to possibly cancel this, that we also put forward some kind of motion to put tenders out to see, like this is going to take time to get information back while you're assessing information to do it in-house and comparisons to maybe Selwyn or other townships. Should all that be in play at this point in time, or are we going to wait till, because we're going to be off for a month? That's all I'm thinking.
To Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Byrne, this is a 1-year termination, which takes us through to March of 31st of 2025. I believe we have ample time to call proposals if that's the direction council wants to move in. So I think we look at that after we report back on a financial analysis on how the operations may go.
Ms. Hurley.
Through you, Chair to Council, it's also important to note that the city of Peterborough, even though if the notice goes forward and we give the notice of termination, they, during our discussions, will always continue, if there's an overlap in time, there's a flexibility because there's an obligation. So it's not like all of a sudden you're going to not have someone looking after. There is an obligation as a municipality as well as the city to continue to maintain our water, wastewater treatment during that time period. So they openly stated based on timing, et cetera, they're here to work with us.
No, thank you for that, Ms. Hurley. That's good to know and calms a bit of the nerves, because I agree, a year feels like a long way away, but as we know, it goes by fast. If there's no other questions with regards to the report, I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councilor Byrne, Councilor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Hancock. But, you're here again. Mr. Hancock, Public Works 2024-12, Millbrook SCADA upgrades. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation before you in this report is that council approve Aramosa Engineering Incorporated to proceed with the upgrades to the SCADA system for the Millbrook wastewater and water systems as per section 5.6.2 single source of the Township Purchasing Bylaw 2020-22 in the amount of $138,650.92 with net municipal HST in the amount of $2,440.26 for a total amount of $141,091.18. And the reports before you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and with regards to the report, my understanding is, so we've been working with Aramosa and they're a fairly unique proprietary company with regards to what we've had experienced and installed thus far. So the justification for the single sourcing is because of the proprietary nature of working with them and having established a relationship with them to continue to manage the existing framework that they sort of provided. Is that accurate?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, first of all, Aramosa, as noted in the report, they were in fact the company that put our system in place when the plants and what upgrades were done originally. And they have been our company to go to for any problems that we've had in the IT or SCADA system. So they are, and they are a reputable firm, well known across the province, and very few out there do their type of work. So the recommendation goes with the history we have with the company and the reputation that they carry with them.
Makes sense. Thank you. Questions, Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair. This is a pretty major upgrade, I guess, of the hardware and the software and the facilities. Does the Aramosa offer a program where you're kind of paying a continuous maintenance fee to cover these off so that they're done along the way over the course of 5 to 7 years or whatever this time frame happens to be, rather than lump sums in chunks like along the way?
Through Mr. Mayor to the Deputy Mayor, Aramosa is, well, first of all, it is a fairly major upgrade. That's true. We are looking at hardware and software. We've actually reached out to Aramosa and they are providing us with an annual maintenance contract to look at for providing upgrades that might eliminate this type of major capital in the future. So we are looking at that presently, and we'll bring that forward after we receive it. But at this point in time, you're quite right. We are looking at a very major upgrade in both software and hardware, and it would be better if we could plane it out a little bit leveler.
Yeah, that's good news. And they're ahead of you on that one, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair to Mr. Hancock, we've got basically 8 years out of a system that was installed back in 2016. And I know there's a lot of moving parts. Is there any speculation from these people to say when the next major refurbishment or replacement or whatever you want to call it, like how long are we looking for as far as what this system will be able to do? And if by some, anyways, if the thing has to be expanded, is it capable, is it flexible enough to allow for that to happen without another big influx of money?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, first of all, I think the system, the SCADA system itself goes through a process of constant upgrades. And I think, you know, we will look at that on an annual basis. So we'll try and keep ourselves current in the industry. And I think that was the point of saying Aramosa would be on board for more regular updates. So that's a software issue. The issue on this one happens to be hardware also, which is really the computers we're using and our iPads and things of that nature. So this is an upgrade to both. As we look at this community expansions and things of that nature, you'll find that we'll have to expand the system to accommodate that. We've talked about a new standpipe. We've talked about upgrades at the sewage plant or other plant locations. We've talked about a fourth well. Each one of those will require an alteration, a change to the system. So they will be included in those capital costs for those projects. And for the most part, they should be paid for by development. That's the intent. But generally, SCADA itself, it's a great system, but it requires constant monitoring, and you'll have ongoing upgrades. So I would say that happens on an annual basis. So we will try and avoid steep costs of this nature. The IT world's ever changing anyhow, so I can't say that will be next year or the year after, but it will happen. It will happen, you know, I think, and we'll try and be on top of it.
What? Oh, no, sorry. I'll come right back just on that subject, and it pertains to Ms. Oh. It's alluded to in the financial summary of the report about that, but that when, Mr. Hancock just mentioned about the DC funding of it. When we talk about the approval for the amount in the budget, was any of that budget amount forecasted to be funded of the 141, I think 150 of the budget? Was any of that sourced from DC revenues, or was that an entirely capitally funded from the levy? Or the user rates?
I believe it was fully from the user rates in water wastewater. But if there's an expansion section of this to accommodate the new homes, we can definitely revisit that and take a look. It is one of the things we do when we do the 5-year update for the water wastewater user fees. We look at how much was pulled from DCs versus the user rate to set the rates for the next 5 years as well. But we could definitely take a look.
It certainly seems like a technology that has growth implications, like some of the comments mentioned. So I think it would be worthwhile to investigate that. Sorry, Councillor Byrne, back to you.
Through the chair, no problem. This is a little off topic, but related. We already own the some of the hardware that's going to be replaced, laptops and iPads or whatever you're referring to. I know in past the library has asked for some updates. Is there any potential to look at that as a possibility? Instead of just disposing of them, they might get passed on to somebody that can use them in the community.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byrne, the equipment is 8 years old, so I'm not sure there's any reuse value in it, but certainly we can reach out and ask the question, but I doubt that it's going to be reusable.
It's a worthwhile question, but it's a worthwhile question, Councillor Byrne, but I can tell you I was surprised too, because council offered to donate iPads that were 2 years old and the library wouldn't accept them. And that's earth shattering to me, but so it goes. And as the world turns, as they say. Other questions with regards to this report? If not, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to move forward with Aramos Engineering. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Mr. Phillips, not dressed up for no reason today. We'll look forward to the toilet rebate program, Public Works 2024-13. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the rest of council. The recommendation for the report before you is that council support the reinstatement of the toilet rebate program. Thank you.
My one question with regards to the toilet rebate program is, should we finally receive the uptake and the funding for those not receiving the support via the rebate on municipal systems, is that money comes from the surplus or the operating budget of Public Works? Is that my understanding? I'm not sure where those not on municipal systems are going to receive the money from.
Through you, Mayor, I can answer it. So right now we've budgeted under Public Works. It's really coming into the general tax levy to fund that. We're going to keep monitoring it to see how much uptake we get. Like last time we got 3. This time's a little bit more money, but if it starts to get up there where we really need to look at like a real budget implication, we'll adjust accordingly.
Very good. Councillor Byrne, question.
Through the chair to Kyle, I kind of anal when it comes to looking for results for stuff that government spends money on. I notice in here you have reports. I just wonder if there's any studies. Some complaint that I always hear with these low flush devices is the number of times you have to redo it. It sounds good on paper. I'm always looking at government stuff to say, do the facts actually correspond to what the hope is?
Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Byrne. Sorry, just if you could clarify, is it like how much you have to use it?
I think the question is the actual performance of the said newer technologies with utilizing less water. If the performance has a poor correlation with the actual purpose of the entity, then that would cause a duplicitous flushing, which would then be, counterproductive to the efficiencies that we're trying to seek with supporting the program. I think that language works.
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, that's what I was intending. And it's a worthwhile question. Like how many times you actually have to, so is it, the technology has improved greatly. The first products that were coming out that were low flow weren't very good and weren't very effective. So you did have to flush multiple times for anything. Now they pretty much are same amount of flushes as to your average toilet. So the amount of savings is there because it is a very measured, yeah, it's a 3, so your current toilets are 3-6 duals or 4 liters per flush compared to 8 liters, and some people are still using 12 liters. So it is a lot more water with about the same performance.
Yeah, I think the only localized data that we could extrapolate the success of those is a lot of the newer homes in this subdivision in Tower Hill South have been fixed with lower flow technologies of those toilets, and we've seen a much lower than forecasted wastewater flow out of that subdivision. So that would suggest that that's even with the occasional outlier that it is working. So anyways, I don't want to talk about this anymore without getting in deeper stuff that we're talking about. So anyways. Is there, we have a recommendation that council support the reinstatement of the toilet rebate program. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley. Can I look for a second movement on that? Councilor Natchoff, very good. Second movement. All in favor of said recommendation? That is approved. Okay, it must be summertime. Let's get out of here before we really get in trouble. Ms. Hurley, CAO report and capital status. What could you possibly have to share? The report is before us for consideration. Any questions about the capital project status report? Seeing none, can I get a movement to receive the report as presented for information? Moved by Councilor Natchoff, seconded by Councilor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Council committee verbal reports. Any updates from your committees? Council before the summer break? I believe Councilor Edgerton has one.
Yeah, sorry about that. At Mr. Hack meeting on June the 20th. On June the 20th, we had a meeting and we went over the downtown mural, which will be a report coming back to council with our suggestions and what like that went over the work plan.
I get it. Thank you, Councilor Edgerton. Any other verbal committee reports? Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, the annual BIA Ladies Night is coming up at the end of July. I don't think we have another meeting before that one, do we? No. Anyway, so I might as well say it now. So end of July, July 25th. Calls out for vendors. So anybody still looking to put a booth in, we're welcoming you. And hope to see everybody out on the 25th. Thank you.
Excellent. Councilor Natchoff?
Not a report, but just as a business owner, I just wanted to make a point of commending the Historical Society for their event last weekend for the Blocks and Blooms event that they had. They sold over 400 tickets to the event. Weather was great. Was super busy throughout the downtown, lots of out-of-town visitors. I had just nothing but really positive things to say, not just about Millbrook, but how beautiful our downtown is, how nice the Mill Pond is, how friendly the business owners were, and it was just a great experience. So just want to thank everyone involved in that, and yeah, hope they do it again.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, I'd just like to mention the Strawberry Social that went on in Mount Pleasant here just last Saturday. It was a big success, sold out event, and the community's pulling together nicely.
Excellent. Thank you. A couple committee reports. I was unable to attend the latest library meeting, but from the conversation, I understand there's more work coming forward on the strategic plan. And there's a slight reorganization with regards to the Millbrook branch that they're hoping will help amend some of the findings that we had with regards to the tech enhancements that we're working on with regards to the potential county inclusion. So we're working on that. I also wanted to thank staff and pass on. I received a number of thanks and appreciation and just praise for our staff with regards to the county event that was held that I know a number of us attended for learning more about the county of Peterborough with the various departments and entities. So we had great success. I know there was a last minute move from the floor of the CMCC to the hallway. So I appreciate Chris and all your team for helping expedite that along. And it was a great event. Also attended the recent Peterborough Police Services Board meeting, and we had a good discussion with regards to local events and things of that nature. And obviously they've been circulating their annual report as well. So we'll look forward to continuing work with them on that as well. And yeah, we're looking forward for a great summer of events. We're hoping to see everyone. I know it's coming up in the announcements, but we're looking forward to see as many people as we can on Monday, on July 1st, to celebrate Canada Day at the CMCC. There's lots of information online, but also circulated from the communications department about the event. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone there. And of course, we want to wish everyone a safe and happy summer of enjoying the community. Look for a mover to receive those verbal committee reports. Councillor Byrne and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? Those are approved. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is no correspondence for action. Personally, we want to take this opportunity to welcome Mark Fromont as our acting deputy clerk. Congratulations, Mark. We're very happy to have you and look forward to working with you moving forward. So congratulations. For those of you who don't know, that's Mark. There he is. All right. Bylaw number 2024-38, being a bylaw to appoint acting deputy clerk for the township of Cavan Monaghan. 16.2, bylaw number 2024-39, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement between Tower Hill Developments, Inc. subdivider and the corporation of the township of Cavan Monaghan, the municipality. Bylaw number 2024-40, being a bylaw to execute a funding agreement, MFA, on the Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF, between the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Corporation of the Township of Cavan Monaghan for access to funding, and bylaw number 2024-41, being a bylaw to approve the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for the long-term financing of certain capital works of the township, of the Corporation of the Township of Cavan Monaghan, and to authorize the entering into a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to OILC, be read a first, second, third time and passed this 24th day of June, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Byrne, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. The confirming bylaw, being a bylaw number 2024-42, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held this June 24th, 2024, be read a first, second, third time and passed this 24th day of June, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. And lastly, motion to adjourn this council meeting, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley and seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is also approved. As we mentioned, the upcoming events in the community, Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting is this evening in a few short minutes at the council chamber at 4 p.m. Canada Day celebrations, as we also mentioned, is at the CMCC Monday, July 1st from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Look forward to seeing everyone there. And as we mentioned, we are entering our summer break. So the next council meeting, the regular council meeting, that I should say, is Monday, August 12th at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. And also don't forget, movie night is being hosted again at CMCC on Thursday, August 15th at 7 p.m. Rain or shine. Wow, look at us go. And have a great summer, everyone. Thank you to staff for making it available, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone